Welcome. My name is George Pearson and I run the How To Gurus channel here on YouTube. Most of the videos in my channel are short demonstrations of the different tools and techniques you'll find in various software programs. Right now I have several hundred of these quick videos available on YouTube. This video though is different. This is part of a new series of longer demonstrations that I'm doing to show you how to complete complex projects from start to finish using a variety of techniques and tools. All of the images I use in these projects are in the public domain, and I've included a link to the pictures in the video description in case you want to work along using the same images. Okay, let's move on to the project. In this Photoshop Elements project, we're going to be doing this kind of hard lighting with glowing headlights effect. Now, it looks pretty interesting here, but it's even more so if you compare this to what we're working from, which is that image right there, just a daytime image in an alley someplace. And we'll be taking this and giving it this more kind of a comic booky feel to it. Fairly straightforward, nothing difficult on this particular project, but it has kind of an interesting outcome. Okay, so let's begin to take a look and work through the different steps to create this kind of hard light with bright headlights effect. Let's get this out of our way here. I'll just minimize that, get that out of the way, and let's enlarge our picture here. I'll try to make it pretty large so it's easy to see what we're doing. That's pretty good. I think we can work with that. There we go. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to keep this image and then make a copy of this. I normally do this on my pictures anyway. I make a copy of whatever it is that I'm working on, so I can, if I mess things up, I can always go back to my original. In this case, though, we're going to be using both of these, and I'll be blending the top image into the bottom image, blending the copy into the bottom image to make our colors more vibrant. And we'll be doing that by using one of our blending modes up here. So it's just a copy of that layer, and go up here to the blending mode, and then we're going to be doing color burn right here. And what that does, as you can see, it just makes all the colors richer. That gives us our basic dark effect in there. The next thing we need is to have our coloration, have kind of blues down here in the background, and then some purples into the car. And we'll do that by just painting right on top of this thing on a new layer. So do a new layer. There we go. And let's go over to our paintbrush. I need to change the brush here. Let's go back to the default brushes, and I want a soft brush, maybe I think a soft 100. That works out well for this picture. Pull that back again, and let's start with just some blues. So go up to Window and our color swatches. I think I'll just stick with these two, straight blue right here, the RGB blue and the RGB magenta. We'll just stick with those on this. And I'll come in and just kind of paint in around here with the blues, and let's come blues into the background like that, and a little bit right across in there. Looks pretty good. Let's bring our color swatches back up again and bring in the magenta. And I want some magenta in here. Maybe it's a bit too bright. I think I'll actually do something a little bit darker than now that I look at that. It's a bit more harsh than I want. I want to have something in the purple range, but not quite that much. Maybe down here somewhere. Let's see. That's pretty good. Maybe a little brighter. Okay, I just don't want to go too crazy on that. I'll put it just a little bit like this, just to bring in some color in here. Now, on this we can come in, I'm just putting in just some random colors in here to help with this, and we're going to then blend this into our image. Actually just taking the colors and putting the colors into the image. We'll then adjust the opacity on that to bring those colors in a little bit better. So we want to come in and do a linear burn on this. So we'll scroll down to linear burn, right down below the color burn. So what happens, it actually brings those colors right into the picture. Let's now bring the opacity down on that a bit. There we go. Possibly a bit too dark now to look at that on the purples. Let me just lighten those purples up a little bit. Some of these things you want to go back and forth, a bit on until you're happy with that. Let's go back to the magenta, but I'm going to bring down my opacity to 50% approximately. Just want to bring a little brighter color in there. That's better. I like that a lot better. Okay, so there's a bit of our colors, maybe just a little bit of color around the outside edge here, just for interest's sake. And that colorizes it, just a standard colorization. Now, if you're not happy with how sharp this is, you can soften this whole thing down by doing a little bit of a Gaussian blur on that. So let's do a blur, Gaussian blur. And you can see here with a little bit of blur, it tends to blend everything in more. Here's no blur right there. There it is. And as I bring the blur up, it will begin to soften up the edges of those color streaks and begin to blend them together. Right in there. Somewhere in there is pretty good. Just kind of takes the edge off of those colors by blurring out that layer a bit. And that's looking nice. I think we're getting pretty close. So we have our basic colorization. Now we have our values, and then we have our colorization on top of that. The next thing we want to do, of course, is our headlights. Those are going to be in white, so let's change our color here to white. Color swatches, we'll go right for a straight white right there. And I'll need to bring down my brush size. Now sometimes the brush size doesn't show properly on these recordings, so I'm going to match this visually and get just the one that I want, kind of like that. That's a 65 pixels on this particular image. And we'll do this on a new layer. There we go. And I'll just tap them 6 times to build up the density. Now the brush is still set at about 50%, which allows me to bring those in slowly. It's always nice if you can do that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. That gives us our bright headlights. Let's now do a little more on that. Let's do a copy of this. I'm going to just name this one Headlights. There we go. Let's make a copy of that, drag it up onto the new layer button. Makes a copy. Makes it much brighter, as you can see. And let's give this one a blending mode. There we are. There's a soft light. And what that does for us is that gives us the bright center and a little bit of a fade out around the outside edge, more of that glowing effect on that with those 2 layers. There it is without, and there it is with. See, the second layer, I'm adding in a lot of brightness into the middle, but keeping that softness around the outside edge. And the reason why I did it this way with 2 layers is that I now have control over this. I can adjust my opacity, for instance, and then have real control over that effect. So there's very little more. So it gives me control over the effect by doing it in 2 stages. You know, here 2 separate stages. The last thing we want to do is to put some color around the lights, and we can use the same trick we did before. We'll bring in a new layer up here, and on this we'll go ahead and grab a blue-purple color, just using our paintbrush. So color swatches, so kind of a blue-purple. Let's see what we've got in here that looks. These are all of the defaults. I think I'm just going to go straight for the RGB blue on this one, and then we'll tone it down a little bit. And let's just come and paint around the headlights. And a little bit in here. Maybe just a little bit into the chrome. So a little bit of coloration in there. Same thing, we want to blend this into the colors, and I want to only lighten. So only the light things will have this applied. So we're going to go ahead and choose the lighten option right there. And then we can adjust these settings on this one layer until it's exactly where we want that to be. Bring the opacity down a little bit. Yeah, it's a bit too much in here, so I'm going to erase some of that out. The eraser tool, need to adjust my brush size here. Let me set this up to about 50. Should be a lot closer. I'll take out a little bit of that in there and over here. Leave a bit on the upright. So let me just take it off of the inside of the grill here. I don't really like it in there that much. And we'll do a little bit of a Gaussian blur on this as well. And that again just helps it to blend in to the picture. So we just want just coloration in there is all I'm really looking for on this particular layer. And at this point, it's then just a matter of doing a bit of tweaking. You can have some fun on this. Let's adjust our lighting on this one, levels. Now on the layer 2 here, and we can take a look at that and see if we can adjust the values at all. Looks like it's pretty good. Not much to do on that. So leave the levels alone. And maybe you want to bring in some orange in here into these lights. This is a little bit trickier because we don't want to have a whole lot of spill off of those. So I'm going to choose a smaller brush size and bring it down just a bit. That's pretty good. That's about the right size. I'll do a new layer for this one as well. It's always nice to keep things on separate layers. And let's do a bright orange if we have something. That's kind of nice right there. Do that one. And I'm just going to just tap this in a little bit. I'm doing 3 taps on each one. Gives me some lightness on that. And then we can use our blending modes again. You have options. Linear is going to give it on the dark edges, you can see there. Lighten will lighten things up, but so the dark parts will still show through. Soft light, we get more of an orange added in, but you still have more of the structure showing. So it depends upon the look that you want to have. Screen. Well, actually, screen looks pretty good on this particular one. I was thinking of using the lighten, but sometimes one or the other of these will work for this kind of an effect. So there we go. There is our multicolored glowing lights. This time I added in these glows on the outsides as well. I think I'll just bring down the opacity a bit on that. They're a bit too much. I don't want them to overpower the headlights. So let's back those off just a touch. Again, that's one of the reasons why you want to separate things out to separate layers whenever possible, so you can come in and adjust those individually. So there you go. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. Simply a matter of copying the background and using the color burn. That gives you your dark contrasty look. Bring your colors in on a color layer. I could have done these separately. I could have done the blues on one layer, purples on a separate layer, had a little more control that way. And then headlights, again, 2 layers in the headlights, so I have a little more control in the headlights. A little bit of color around the headlights. All of these are using different blending modes in here. There's these surrounds on lighten, and then of course one for our indicator lights in there. The nice thing about this technique is you can come back in and you can change things at any point. Let's say I wanted to put more blue in here across the top of that hood. Instead of having that purple, I want to have more blue in there. We'll just go back to the paintbrush. Okay, we're on the paintbrush. That's fine. and then find a nice blue to use. I'll use this blue here. I'll put it on another layer so I can adjust the amounts. And I'm just going to paint in some blue along that edge. Kind of coloring it blue, as you can see. And then it's a matter of, just like we did down here, using a blending mode to blend this into the picture. Do the same thing on this one. Linear burn blends it into the picture, as you can see there, and just brings in the colors. And then, being on its own layer, I can come in and again I can adjust the opacity. So now I'm able to blend this one, the blues, back in my purples, giving me kind of a blue-purple coloration in there. So there you go. That's how to do this bright light effect. What makes it look like real bright lights, of course, is that everything else is dark, and these are pure white. That gives you that lighted effect. And that's, of course, done by doing this and duplicating and then blending mode for your background color burn. Gives you that real nice kind of cartoony graphic novel effect. So there we go. That's how to do the car headlights. Let's just take a real fast look here. Turn everything off. Back to the original. There's the original picture, daylight shot. There's the high contrast. There's our coloration. There's the adjustment on the hood. First layer of headlights, second layer of headlights, the blue coloration around the headlights, and the indicator lights. Okay, so this is the controlled way of doing coloration on this. Now I want to show you another way, another interesting way of doing coloration. I'm just going to hide these two color layers. I'll leave everything else on there. And I'll put a new layer right above here. Let's do a new layer. And this time we're going to do something else. And that's an adjustment layer, which I'll actually come in right above this blank layer. So you can see where that is. So layer, adjustment layer. And down here's a thing called gradient map. What this does, I'll just choose OK, that gives me the new layer. What this does is it takes a gradient and applies the gradient to the image, as you can see there. And you can use any of your gradients. These kind of really strange looking maps just map these colors into the overall image. Real interesting technique. Let's just go back here to our default colors and we'll see what we've got. Let's try our color harmonies. That's kind of interesting, actually. That's not too bad. That's weird. That's even stranger. Not really what I want. A lot of these is just a matter of going through and seeing what you have, seeing if anything gives you the effect that you're looking for. And nothing really great in here, unfortunately. Nothing really what I'm looking for. But we'll go with this one just so you can see how this works. All right. There's a gradient map. You can reverse this if you want to. And then we can do a blending mode on this to blend it in. Just like we did our blending mode up here, we're going to blend this into the background color and then adjust this a bit afterwards. So let's do our linear burn. And that blends those colors into our overall image. See, it has a little different effect. You can kind of see the effects up in there. You can kind of have a banding thing happening. So it's similar to what we did here. There's less control, of course, because I can't control the actual gradient, how the gradient is being applied to the image. But it's a real fast way to bring in some coloration. You can then add color on top if you want to, and that's fine as well. You can go back and forth on these things. But it's a different technique, which is fun to play with. And again, you can control the effect in here by controlling your opacity amount. to control the amount of effect being applied to the image. And if you double click on the icon here, you can come in and change your map as well. So you can try different gradient maps. If you want to get real fancy, you can actually click on right on the gradient itself, bring up the gradient editor, and then come in here and make all kinds of changes on this. Let's see, I want to bring the roughness down a bit on that. There we go. Just kind of softens up the effect. So there it is, a second way of bringing in colors. It has some very interesting effects this way. You'd want to go through and try different gradients. The benefit of this is get real nice kind of very complex colorations, as you can see. The downside of this is it's not as controllable as the other method, the other hand-drawn, hand coloration method. But there you go, secondary effect on a way to colorize this kind of a high contrast image. Thank you for watching this special Photoshop photography project video. Don't forget to subscribe so that you will get first notice of new project videos in the future. Just click on this link right here where it says subscribe here. You can get all 12 project videos in this series along with 26 special videos demonstrating the tools and techniques that I used in these projects by clicking on this link right down here. And then thank you again for watching this training video.